Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to another Friday live edition of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Now, today we're going to be talking about something that, because I'm an email guy, people ask me about all the time, and I think it's something that a lot of people dread. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the spam folder. And how do you avoid having your emails land in the spam folder of your audience? Now, if you hear people talk about this, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about things like deliverability and kind of talking about it in a different way. But at the end of the day, what we really care about as marketers is that our messages get through to our audience. And that means that it doesn't land in spam, because I don't know about you, but I don't go through my spam folder very often, and most people don't. So what we're going to be talking about is that. And spam folder stuff we're going to be talking about also applies to promotions, tabs, etc. So that's what we're talking about today, how to avoid landing in the spam folder. Before we get to the details here, though, and got to get to the episode, I wanted to remind you, anyone who's listening to this live or the day it comes out, we are running a 2-day flash sale of Badass Email Marketing. So today is the last day of that. You can get access to my signature email marketing course, where I teach you how to kind of build an overall email marketing system that will make it easy to get people kind of into your world, warmed up from ice cold leads into red hot buyers, so they'll actually buy. People who went through the beta round got amazing results. One person shared with us that she 4x'd her results from her launch before the course. Others have talked about how they were afraid of sending sales emails. Now they sent email-only sequences for sales and got great results. So it's a great program. It's available today only. So if you're interested, head to bobbyklink.com/enroll. Again, bobbyklink.com/enroll. It's the last time the program is going to be available before it's evergreened, which is going to be a few months. And there's a bunch of great bonuses as well. So with that, I want to dive in to the substance of today's episode, which is how do you avoid the spam folder? And I have a couple of thoughts here. But what I want to start with is by pointing out that spam filtering for email it's a lot like SEO. And it's a lot like SEO in a lot of ways. And partly what I mean by that is that in the old days, the spam folder filtering was very kind of like robotic. And what I mean by that is it was like something where you could literally like just avoid the spam filter by avoiding certain things, because there were certain triggers that it was an on-off switch that would send you to spam or not send you to spam. And it was a very simple process, kind of like in the old days SEO, search engine optimization was all about, well, how many backlinks do you have? And they didn't care how many, or how many times can you stuff a keyword into your thing. Over time, though, on the internets, the systems have gotten smarter. And just like SEO, that's also true of spam folders. Or spam kind of monitoring and all that kind of happens automatically. And so for this, I'm talking about, spam filtering that happens at Gmail. I'm talking about spam filtering that happens by kind of Microsoft with its system, by Yahoo, by all of those systems. And this is all separate from, like, corporations will often have spam filtering and firewalls and things like that. But the way it's working now, just to give you a sense, anyone who tells you that there is some golden rule that all you have to do is X and you'll stay out of the spam folder doesn't know what they're talking about, because it's not that simple. What happens now, and the way that kind of systems figure out whether to put you into spam is kind of it's an algorithm. And it's not literally an algorithm, but it's kind of like the algorithms where there isn't a precise thing and we don't know exactly. And also, so you understand, Google wouldn't tell us what their test is because they would not want spammers to be able to simply avoid their ways of doing it. So with that in mind, let's talk about what actually happens and what's actually affecting things. Actually, first, let me talk about something that doesn't affect things. If you hear people talk about the fact that there are spam words that will land you in spam, from every deliverability expert I've talked to now, that is simply not the case. That was the way of the world back then. But if you are otherwise not someone who's going to land in spam, using the word free or sale or anything like that is not going to put you in spam. Now, it might land you in promotions tab in Gmail because it's clearly a promotion, but it's not going to move you over to spam. So there is no such thing as a spam word that 50 words, and you'll see people talking about that. All that's BS. It used to be true, isn't true anymore. Nowadays, the most important factor that decides where your email lands is your sender reputation. And your sender reputation has to do with a couple of very important things. It's basically a comparison of the positive actions that people who receive your emails get versus the negative reactions. And let's talk about what positive reactions are. Positive reactions are things like opens, clicks, responses. And again, from every deliverability expert I've ever talked to, they say that responses are in many ways one of the most important and kind of best things to get. Because if you think about it, when someone clicks reply and responds to your email, that is one of the strongest statements that they are interested in what you're doing. So that is a huge positive engagement. So that's something that's very good. But again, it's opens, it's clicks, it's responses, things like that show that people are actually interested in what you're sending. It makes sense, right? That's good stuff. Now, on the other side, the bad stuff are people who unsubscribe and click as spam and report it as spam. And when I say report it as spam here, I am not talking about if they report it to your email service provider. I'm talking about if they report it within Google or within their specific email or their specific place where they're reporting it. So if you got that, if you or ever in Google or Gmail, you'll see there's a way to report something as spam. Well, if you report that as spam, Gmail says, okay, this person is getting a negative response. So you're kind of, when you look at the most important thing of where you land, it's that stuff. And so again, this is why getting people to engage with your email on a regular basis is one of the most important things that can happen, because if you're getting positive engagement, if you're getting overwhelmingly, people are liking this, this is something that will have a positive impact on your reputation score. And I want to talk about reputation score here because there's a few things that can impact this. Part of the reputation score can be at the server level, the server that is sending the email. So that is your email service provider. And then part of the reputation score is for your domain. So in my case, that would be at bobbyklink.com. And the systems are tracking all of this and looking at all these things. And so there's a couple of things there. So part of this is within your control, right? I mean, if your domain, hopefully you're the only one sending from your domain, so you control the reputation score of your domain. Your email service provider, not as much. This is why, some email service providers will have better deliverability than others because they do a better job at doing other things. And some of the email service providers where you have a problem is if they allow people to just mass import lists with no verification that they had permission or got consent. If they don't monitor for bounces, for example, like if a bunch of your emails are getting bounced back because it's a bad email. That's another thing that can affect things. So all of that stuff is happening behind the scenes. If you are with a reputable email service provider, it should not be a problem. We use Kartra. Kartra uses a lot of back-end systems that are automatically tracking stuff, automatically taking care of that. And they are careful about who is allowed in and who's allowed to email. And so you have that monitoring happening on the back end. ConvertKit is another one. They do the exact same thing. ActiveCampaign also doing those things as well. So all of the really highly reputable email service providers are doing that behind the scenes. So you're not going to have, or you shouldn't have, a huge problem with your email service provider's domain reputation. What you have to worry about is your own personal domain reputation. And that has to do with how much do people like your email. The more they like your email, the more they engage with it, the more you're getting positive reactions, the more that you're going to have kind of this positive feedback loop that helps things. So I joked with Katie when I was talking about this, because we're thinking about doing a blog, and we were talking about this would be like deliverability would be something to do in a blog post, because there's a lot of really dense information in some stuff. So we were talking about it, and I joked that when I think of email deliverability now and people who ask about it, I think of the movie Liar Liar, where if Jim Carrey's character represents people in all kinds of stuff, including in like criminal defense cases, evidently, and he can't lie. So at some point, like a client calls and says, like, how do I avoid going to jail or something like that? And like he answers the phone and says, quit breaking the law. And then he puts in arsehole, but not arse. And so when people ask me about how do I stay out of the spam complaint or spam folder, my first answer is, well, quit acting like a spammer. And I know that might hurt, but I guess my point is send emails that people want, not stuff that feels like spam, and then you don't have this problem as much. So it's all about send engaging, fun emails that people want, and then hopefully you're going to have this positive reputation, positive feedback loop, instead of a negative feedback loop. And so that's kind of one of the things, the most important thing. Now, there's other things that you have to do that are more about a sign of overall list health. There are things out there called spam traps. A spam trap is literally email addresses that at this point, in a sense, anyone who is emailing them is either complete spam or not using good email marketing practices. And there's a few different kinds. There is what's called a pristine spam trap. And a pristine spam trap is an email address that has literally never signed up for anything. So the only way that you would be emailing that address is if you bought a list. And people scrape things and will do things like that. So if you buy a list somewhere, you can end up there. And so that is kind of the worst case. And let me talk about spam traps generally. No one knows exactly what the spam traps are. We have ideas. There are different companies that have some thoughts on this and will tell you, here, we believe this is a spam trap, but they don't know for sure. And they definitely don't know all of them. So there are some of these things where if you hit one of those pristine spam traps, it is a sign to the people that somehow you've done something that is really spammy. Bought a list. You're emailing people you don't have consent for. And so that's the kind of thing that is the worst. Then there are like misspelling spam traps. And so this is like some of the domains, like some Gmail accounts like Gmail and some of the other major ones will buy domains with misspelled names on purpose. And if you keep emailing those over and over again, it's a sign to them that you are not using good list hygiene, because you should be saying, oh, well, if it says gmail.com instead of gmail.com, that's not a real address. And so it's just a sign that you are sending emails without good list hygiene. Bounces can be a problem. And what will happen is like, so when you send an email and someone, for example, has their email address is no longer valid because they closed down the domain or for whatever reason that address isn't valid. Depending on the system, there will be a certain period of time where when you send the email, it will bounce back and tell you this is not a valid email address anymore. And what you need to do is remove those from your list. And again, a good email service provider would be doing that for you. But the reason why it's important to do that is once that time period where they send you this bounce back ends, it will actually go through, and it's called a recycle trap. And again, this is getting very technical, but what will happen is, like, again, let's say it was a G Suite, a Google Suite email address, and I don't know the time period for Google, but let's say it's 18 months after the account's no longer active. If 24 months later they get an email, their system triggers it and says, okay, the sender of this email is sending spam. And so again, this is the kind of thing why I talk about you need to have list hygiene, which means removing people from your list. If you haven't emailed your list in a long time, you got to be careful, because you need to be doing it on a regular enough basis that you're getting this feedback about whether these addresses are valid or not. Otherwise, you land in spam traps. So basically, without making spam traps too big of a deal, as long as you are not buying lists and you are cleaning your list periodically and you're emailing your list periodically and you're using an email service provider that's going to automatically remove bounced back emails, it's not a problem. And if you're one of my subscribers who's had a problem where you got blacklisted before by Kartra, that was probably part of the problem. And I know one example, someone like literally his domain was like, turned off for a day and then turned right back on. Well, it happened to be that I had sent an email at that point. A good email service provider like Kartra will then blacklist that email address and say, we are not going to send another email to that email address because it's invalid. They don't want the kind of bounce back messages for reputation score for their servers. So a good ESP, what they will do is they will require that customer to email them directly from that email address that they got the bounce back saying, hey, please, take me off of this list of being blocked from your sender, and they will do it. So that'll give you some sense of why that is. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is technical, and I'm going to be very surface level here. I'm not going to go details. There are three kinds of technical authentication. One is called DKIM, one is called SPF, and one is called DMARC. They're all acronyms. DKIM and SPF you do not need to worry about from an email service provider, because those are handled by your email service provider. So when I send you an email through my Kartra account, your system, whether it's Gmail or whatever, is reading header data and checking header data versus things that can be authenticated elsewhere, and they're doing it based upon the IPs and the server addresses for Kartra. So if you are using an email service provider, that is done automatically for you. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. Now, you would potentially need to deal with that for your own emails, not email marketing. Like for me, when I'm just emailing through our G Suite account, having DKIM and SPF verification set up can help, not for email marketing, but just for standard emails. Now, DMARC is a bit different. And having DMARC, and I don't even know what it stands for, having that in place is in many ways the highest level of authentication, the highest badge of kind of checked back, highest level of approval, if you will. But there are some problems with it, because what DMARC is doing is it is comparing the domain, so in my case, bobbyklink.com, and data that we have put somewhere on DMARC against both the domain information, but also the sending IP addresses. So in my case, Kartra. And this is where you have to be careful, because we had an issue come up because we were having some issues with some of our just Gmail, not our Kartra, not our marketing stuff. We had some issues come up where, for some reason, Katie's emails were not getting delivered. So my integrator, emails were just disappearing. And so we were thinking there was some kind of issue. So we went to set up DMARC authentication on our domain. The problem is we are still trying to find how do we get that set up within Kartra, because if we set it up on our domain, that's great. our emails, like Katie's emails from her G Suite, my email just when I go into my Gmail and send them, will show that we're confirmed all across the board, DKIM, SPF, and DMARC. But if we don't do something to set it up correctly with our ESP, then our marketing emails will actually show as suspicious because DMARC is activated and is not being met. So what I would tell you is you probably, for email marketing, don't have to worry about DMARC. But, and here's the caution I want to give you, if you're going to set it up for your own domain, for your own protection, and to make sure that your own emails, not your marketing stuff, but the stuff you're sending from your inbox gets through, make sure that you are working with your ESP in concert to make sure that then your email marketing stuff will pass DMARC, because otherwise it can create this problem. So I'm not going to go into details on a podcast on that because I don't think you want details on that. I'm simply going to tell you that DMARC can be powerful and can help protect your domain. And one of the ways that it would happen is if someone spoofed your domain somehow, if you have DMARC in place and have important things set up the right way, you can literally make it so that that email just automatically gets rejected by other servers. So like no one could do a phishing or something like that by pretending to be you. That's the power of DMARC. That's why you would want to do it. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're working in concert with your ESP to get it. And I know that like places like ConvertKit have a very simple way. You just have to kind of, there's a process for doing it. You just have to work with your email service provider to make sure that it's all kind of working and not creating an issue for your email marketing. So that's kind of the last piece I want to talk about. Now, on deliverability, though, the important thing I want you to get through your mind is these authentication issues can create an issue like if something is done wrong technically, but for the most part, they should not be a problem. Spam traps are all about list hygiene. As long as you are cleaning your list regularly, not just waiting a year and a half with a list and emailing it and not buying lists, that should not be a problem. I talked about those last two things just so you know how it can be an issue. But if you're doing email marketing right, and by that I mean only sending to people who signed up for your list and emailing regularly, really the only question is how engaging are you? Because if you send engaging emails, you will have a good reputation score. And if you have a good reputation score, you should not land in the spam trap, in the spam folder with any regularity. Now, again, if someone moves you over there, obviously they can do that manually, but you should not be landing in the spam folder generally. So in other words, send good emails and you should not be in the spam folder. So that's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'll talk to you next week. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.